What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I'm back with yet another album review, and today I am talking about the debut album from Italian progressive metal band Ghost on Mars with Out of Time and Space. This also came out on May 3rd, this time on Willowtip Records, and like I said, this is the debut album from this Italian-based, or Italy-based progressive metal band. So when I was going through Metal Archives to figure out what I wanted to talk about on the weekend of May 3rd, I was like, you know what? How about I highlight this one because it's on Willowtip Records, which is a really good label, and also it's progressive metal, and I am a fan of prog metal, just depending on the band. And, well, this is some really tasteful progressive metal. I would say it definitely focuses a little bit more on the modern style of progressive metal, but it does have little touches of classic prog metal from the late 80s and the 90s. But we kick things off with Beyond the Mist, and you start off with almost radio transmission vocal effects on top of clean guitars. And then pretty much right from this opening track, which was actually the longest track of the album, I think at about 7.5 minutes, and you pretty much get everything you're going to hear on this album. You get occasional dissonant riffs, and when I mean dissonant riffs, I'm talking more of like Mastodon dissonant riffs, like that style of dissonant riffs, not like Immolation or Ulcerate or Gorguts or any of those bands. I'm talking Mastodon dissonance. And of course, time shifts with the time signatures happen not only on this track, but pretty much across the board on the entire album. And I have to say, when it comes down to the musicianship on this entire album, I get some nods to bands like Dream Theater, as well as even modern bands like Haken, for example. But also, this album, and especially here, even here on this opening track, it grooves. It's like whether it's in 3/4 or 4/4, the groove on this song and even on the whole album is quite infectious, very much like classic prog would have you feel. And the vocals kind of remind me, like the clean vocals kind of remind me a little bit of Tesseract, which after that last Tesseract album, I've pretty much become a fan of Tesseract. And thank God the vocalist here for Ghost on Mars doesn't sound like Spencer Sotelo. I'm going to keep bashing him until he's gone from Periphery, but that ain't happening. But anyways, I digress. There's even occasional growl vocals that pop up, not only here on Beyond the Mist, but even on the following track, Quarantine, and as well as songs like Back from the Dead and the closing track, Lost Signal. You get some death growls, and they're more sinister sounding death growls. Like the closest vocalist I could compare this guy to would be somebody like a Nick Holmes from Paradise Lost and Bloodbath, when it comes to the growls at least. But yeah, this opening track definitely kind of gets everything going. The following track, Quarantine, with the cool melody that opens it up, gave me instant Dream Theater nods. And even the rhythms, they kind of gallop along almost like Dream Theater or even like Iron Maiden a little bit. But of course, nasty death growls, but some more sullen melodies kind of pop up in here. And then we get into the song They, which this one starts off really interesting. Clean and acoustic guitars working together. Kind of reminded me a little bit of like the clean or acoustic parts from bands like Nile or even latter era Death. And the drums go absolutely wild and the guitars get a little darker and more dissonant again. But yeah, this was definitely one of the darker songs on the entire album. And in fact, when it comes down to the concepts they're going for on these songs, are kind of derived from horror and sci-fi books and films. Then we get into a song like Carbon Skin, where you get a riff that felt like Mastodon at the beginning, and it grooves hard, and then you even get some like chunky chugs that kind of reminded me of Grin-era Coroner a little bit. It kind of had a little bit of that vibe. Even some cool effects on the guitars to sound like keyboards before it fades into the actual guitars, which leads me to talking about the guitar solos. The fucking leads on this album are absolutely exceptional. Like, they range everywhere from atmosphere to melody to feeling to shred, the taps. Whoever the lead guitarist is, holy crap, you were doing an excellent job with these leads. Then to the song Nocturnal. This one was a standout because it was a little bit slower, a little on the doomy side. Dissonance comes back again, but the clean sections on this track instantly gave me nods to Opeth. And then you get into a track like That Time I Saw the Moon. The Tesseract vibes really come out strong with this track within the grooves, but with atmospheric progressions on top of that, on top of that groove. English, motherfucker, do you speak it? And then I love how they do the chorus here with the tapping guitars and even a big, monstrous breakdown with a guitar solo connected to it. Under a Crescent Moon, which find it kind of weird how they had two tracks with the name Moon in it back to back. This one, the clean start with just single note or single clean notes, made me think of Enslaved a little bit whenever you hear them do stuff like that. But it's mostly about the clean guitars and clever bass drum work when it comes to like single foot on the kick. Then to the song Back from the Dead, which this one I would say almost borders on gothic metal a little bit because it's so dark and vocal harmonies up the yin yang. It gets a bit doomy at times, more sinister growls, but when it gets a little more up tempo, kind of reminded me of Amorphous a little bit. Like whenever Amorphous gets into the more up-tempo stuff, not so much like thrashy, but just more up-tempo, almost like classic metal a little bit. Back to Life, this one was maybe the darkest song on the entire album in the sense of the atmosphere. It's somber with the clean guitars, it's doomy, it's dark, and the lead, arguably the most somber lead on the entire album. And then to the closing track, Lost Signal, cosmic clean guitars, triplet swings up the yin-yang with a cool lead on top, some Opeth chugs, more death growls show up, and more atmospheric guitar work. So yeah, this album's all about the atmosphere and the songwriting dynamics, just like you would expect out of progressive metal. Now, as far as any complaints I really have, as far as the music goes, I think they nailed the music on here. I think the music's pretty exceptional on here. Really, my biggest complaint that I had with this album was sometimes the mix on some of these songs get a bit uneven, mainly in the vocals. Like in the first half of the album, it felt like the vocals were a little bit too up front, but then as the album goes along, the mix gets a little more sorted out, which makes me wonder what happened with the first half songs. Like, why were the vocals just so far ahead? But overall, this was actually a pretty damn great album. I am going to give this a 4 out of 5. For a debut album from these Italians, they know how to write beautiful yet heavy progressive metal. And that's all you could ask for, right? But of course, those are just my opinions. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.